So here we are at Fort Selkirk and on the Yukon River, and just across back in this corner, kind of hard to see, is where the Pelly River enters the Yukon. And a fellow by the name of Robert Campbell, so a wee bit of history, is he makes his way down the Pelly River and establishes the first Hudson Bay post in 1848 at the confluence. Now, for 2 years in a row, the darn thing gets flooded out. So he gets smart and he moves it over to this side of the river to what is now Fort Selkirk. The amazing part about this site is, as Cathy and I canoed down the Yukon, there's all kinds of remnants of falling in structures from the gold rush era. But all the structures here are original. They're on the original site, and it's the real McCoy, which is absolutely fascinating. And I'm going to interview an amazing woman shortly who's going to explain why they survived where others didn't. But Campbell establishes that, gets moved over here. Now the Chilkat Indians, they live on the west coast, and they're trading with the Russians for decades. And in turn, they trade with the northern Shoshone natives that live here. Now, when the Hudson Bay arrives, well, the natives on the coast, they aren't going to have any part of that competition. So in 1852, they enter the Fort Selkirk and they pillage the village. Campbell races away just to save his skin. So the Hudson Bay, they skedaddle. They're out of here. Things sort of revert back to normal. So we've got a gathering place for the northern Shoshone natives. They're trappers, they're traders. But as time goes on, not too awful long, and the gold rush breaks out in the Klondike. Now this place becomes a booming metropolis. At one time, 6 or 7 hotels. There's wood cutting camps to feed the hungry boilers of the steam paddlers all up and down this river. A lot of the natives now are working, trapping in the winter, perhaps when it freezes up. And the burgeoning aspect of this is mind-boggling. So the Hudson Bay Company isn't coming back here. They had enough. But it's stores like this that open. And they replace that. They become the center. On the right-hand side of this structure is a portion of it that was dedicated for fur trading. So all the furs would come in from the trappers. And they would get basically a account here that they could pay off for foodstuffs and trade goods, etc. And it was all good until the steam wheelers quit. Now, when the steam wheelers quit, once the road was built between Whitehorse and Dawson, and there was an all-weather road, this place ground to a halt and would have disintegrated, like I mentioned, like the other cabins that Cathy and I came across in our paddle, had it not been for one man. And I'm going to have a young lady who's going to introduce you to him and explain how one person can really make a difference. So we're here at Fort Selkirk in what is the oldest building in the Yukon Territory. Is that right, Freda?
Yeah.
Right. So it's 1892?
Yes.
And it's the Anglican Schoolhouse.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let Freda introduce herself, but she's going to basically be sharing me some of her teachings today, and I thought a very appropriate place would be in a schoolhouse.
Yeah.
So could you introduce yourself, Freda?
My name is Freda Alfred. I'm from Pelly Crossing, and I'm Wolfe clan. We have 2 clans in our community. One is Wolfe and Crow, and I'm Crow. And I've been working here at Fort Selkirk as interpreter for the last 18 years, and this is my 19th year of being interpreter at Fort Selkirk.
Well, and this is our second time.
Yeah.
8 years ago we had to come.
8 years ago,
You spent
yeah.
an entire afternoon with me.
Yeah.
That was wonderful.
Sure did.
And
yeah.
as is this. So,
Yeah.
I was prior to the missionaries coming here, your people were basically they followed the female side of the family, right? They were
Yes, yes.
or what's the word I'm looking for?
On the mother's side.
On the mother's
Yeah.
side. So that changed though with the missionaries, did it not? Did it? And how the surname or the Christian name was followed?
Well, our people, before the missionaries came here to Fort Selkirk, our people pretty well had our traditional First Nation name. And because they can't pronounce it, the missionaries couldn't pronounce it, they changed it.
And gave you names.
So they gave them names, yeah.
Quite offensive.
Yeah, yeah.
Quite offensive. Wow. So other things changed. You mentioned earlier when we did the tour that your people believed in cremation of the body when they passed over, and the missionaries changed that aspect of your culture as well.
Yeah. our people used to go out in the land, and when one of our loved ones pass on, and they would cremate them out in the land, and then when the missionaries came in the 30s, they would change that and say it's wrong to do that. So our people started burying our people in a casket, and that's why there's a cemetery nearby here. And our people was buried in caskets, but now today our people have their own choices what to make. They can either be cremated or buried in a casket, so they don't have no control over our First Nations people anymore. Yeah.
Which is good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I was looking at some of the placards around, and you mentioned earlier that you have a fascinating story about an uncle of yours who, when this place essentially stopped being an active community, about the time the steamboats finished running, the rivers, roads had replaced them, planes were replacing dog sleds on the river. You had an uncle that came and stayed here.
Yeah. Well, my uncle Danny Roberts was pretty well raised up here in Fort Selkirk, and they call him Captain Danny Roberts. Yeah, he was the caretaker here at Fort Selkirk, and he was the mayor of Fort Selkirk, and he would work for the government and to clean all the roofs off all the buildings when it snowed on there. So he took good care of the houses for he stayed here, and was his home. This place was a live town when he lived here, but people started moving out in the late 50s, so the last steamboat went out in 1953, and so people move away from here, and they moved up to Minto, and then our First Nation people moved to Pelly Crossing. So my uncle never did move. He lived here.
He just stayed.
And he went to school in this building here where we're sitting right now.
That's crazy.
So our uncle went to school here.
And they say that one person can't make a difference. Well, he sure did.
Yeah.
Or we wouldn't be sitting in this building, would we?
Yeah.
Remarkable.
He and then also my other uncle that's our boss right now, Franklin Roberts. That's Danny Roberts' brother, and he was born here in this school. Yeah.
We got the privilege of meeting your mother this morning briefly, and
Yeah.
she actually rode on the steam paddlers on the
Yeah.
Yukon River.
Yeah, she rode in a steamboat. She said it was $3 to get from Fort Selkirk to Dawson City, and she said it's $3. They got to pay $3. So I was saying, in order to pay $3, you got to cut wood, and it's $3 a cord to cut wood. So one cord will get you to Dawson, and if you cut another 3 cords, you
got you home.
you come back home to Selkirk. Yeah.
And there you go.
Mm-hmm.
That's in today a cord. Well, I don't know what a cord is up here. Probably
Well, a cord
more.
now today is like almost $400 now today.
It's about $350 in southern
and
Ontario.
they use power saw. But back then, when my uncle cut wood, they used sweet saw. Yeah.
And
So
an
that-
axe.
Yeah, an axe, and that was.
Imagine the work to do that. Those steam engines sure used a lot of it too. There were
Yeah.
wood camps all up and down the river.
Yeah, from Whitehorse to Alaska.
And a lot of the northern Shoshone would have worked in those wood camps, I
Yeah,
presume.
pretty well. Most of the northern Shoshone people, they had wood camps all along the river, and they would cut wood. And my mom and Franklin, and they would go with their parents downriver to Carlow Creek, and they would cut wood there. They would cut wood there for the steamboat too.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they stayed there and cut wood there. Yeah,
Fascinating history.
very, very beautiful place here.
Yeah.
There's nowhere else I want to work, but it's here at Fort Selkirk. And people ask me, oh, how long you been working there? I say 18 years, it's 19 years now, and I never get tired of it.
No.
Yeah, this is me.
Are you ever
It's
going to
my life.
retire?
Well, I was thinking about it, but seemed like I can't.
No?
Yeah,
Well, you're too important. You can't. I'm going to
yeah,
come back in another 8 years. We're going to have
yeah.
this conversation
See
again.
me again.
Wouldn't that be,
Yeah.
wouldn't that be interesting? But you know, since I've left, my hair's turned white and yours is still dark, dark black. What the heck?
And I don't dye my hair.
No, neither do I. Neither do I. Well, I really appreciate you sharing the history. I can't say how much we've enjoyed coming here, and we'll be back again, I'm sure.
Thank you. Come again, yeah,
Yeah.
because this is a spiritual place here and a loving place and a healing place, where people feel good when they come here.
You can feel
Yeah,
it. You
yeah,
can actually feel it.
yeah,
You're sleeping on the ground and walking the grounds.
yeah.
I'm curious as to, like, I know from your perspective, this is very meaningful, the culture and keeping the culture alive. What is it like for the youth in Native communities today? Like, is there a real passion and interest with the younger folks to regenerate, and rejuvenate the culture?
Um, well, in our culture was very strong here in Fort Selkirk. Our people that were living here, actually, I raised up around them. So I'm very strong in my culture, and then when everybody moved from Fort Selkirk to Mento, then to Pelly, they brought along the culture with them.
Mm-hmm.
So in Pelly Crossing right now, our culture is very strong. It's like we have potlatches, we have naming ceremony, we have giveaway potlatch, and it's very strong.
That's
And
good.
the majority of people that live there are all First Nations, and we do a lot of camping, like traditional camping, and teaching our younger generation to carry on our tradition. So even the little ones, we have dancers. There's 35 in a group. They're called the spirit dancers, and the little ones dance, and they're only like
It'd
2
be
years
cute to
old. Yeah.
watch. Yeah.
So so we carry on and our culture, what we know, to our younger generation, and they're always out camping. And like soon they're gonna have a camp here in Fort Selkirk in August. It's a hunting camp, so they take the young boys out and teach them
Teach
how
them
to hunt,
the
how to
teachings.
cut the moose meat, how to make dry meat,
Preserve
yeah,
it.
how to
Tan them.
yeah, how,
We were talking about that
yeah,
earlier.
tanning,
The
yeah,
effort in tanning.
yeah, tanning is pretty tough, work to do.
I think you're a
But
pretty tough lady, Freda,
yeah,
because you run a trap line as well in the winter.
yeah.
And what's the temperature up here now
Well,
in the winters?
barely gets to minus 55.
Barely.
Yeah,
That's
and
balmy.
well, when I grew up, it was minus 85, minus 80. When
Wow.
I went to school, it was around minus 70.
You
But
would,
I experienced minus 80
yeah.
Celsius, and it's very cold, but you adapt to that kind of a weather.
Hmm.
Yeah. But now today it only gets up to minus 55, so that's not too bad.
Thank you very much, Frida.
Yeah,
It's been a
thank you.
pleasure.
Merci.
And when I get home, I'm going to
Yeah.
fire up the forge. And you said you admired that knife.
Yeah.
I'm going to make you a custom-made one.
Thank you.
And mail it up here
Yeah.
to you.
Merci, Joe.
I sure appreciate you taking the
Thank
time.
you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The absolute fascinating part of this particular area, if we think about inhabited parts of the world, there are very old parts, and then there are ancient or almost prehistoric parts, and this would be one. So this is on the edge of what's called a Beringia, which is a prehistoric landmass that extends across the Bering Straits into what we know as Russia today, in Siberia. And so during the last ice age, when most of North America was under miles of ice, this was ice-free. So this was the pathway they took. This was the area that they first lived, hunted, fished. They've actually found archaeological finds here that date back between 8 and 10,000 years. So it's old. If we think today about the Northwest, or we call them the Royal Canadian Mounted Police or the Northwest Mounted Police back in the 1800s, they're not the same as what we think of as police today. Often they wouldn't even carry a service revolver unless they thought they were going to need it. In the wintertime, in the depths of winter, they would dog sled into the hinterland to visit every trap line to ensure the trappers were safe and not going mentally crazy with cabin fever. They delivered mail, they helped deliver babies, they helped in medical procedures. And they helped keep the peace. So they didn't really need to wear a gun because they were so respected by people in the North and for the services that they provided. That's some pretty fascinating architecture in what is the only last or the last surviving building of what has to be the most bizarre military expedition ever sent out by the Canadian Army. So we've got the Yukon Field Force, they were called, led by Colonel Evans, and there were 203 souls housed here. They built 12 buildings, some a lot bigger than this, barracks, etc. They had a parade square. They had a 7-pound cannon, and they were sent up here primarily to deal with sovereignty, for lack of a better word. The majority of people that were up here in the Yukon during the gold rush days were Americans, and there was disputes over borders. So they weren't here very long, and 50 of them were sent away to Dawson City where they were really needed. They weren't needed here. But the town of Fort Selkirk at this time had about 6 or 7 hotels. And apparently these were a rowdy bunch, these soldiers, when they had free time. And they certainly weren't very, they didn't enamor themselves, I should say, with the native population here. Anyway, it was very short-lived, a little over 2 years, and they're sent out of here. And the young fellows that lived and breathed and housed themselves here find themselves way across the ocean at a place, a little battle called the Boer War. So looking across the Yukon River here, there's a rock face on the far side. You'll see 2 big divots in it. Well, those are where their target practice for their 7-pound cannon, and much to the chagrin of the natives. They didn't like that much either. But yeah, they drilled here, and that's about all they did. And they loved firing their cannon across that river. When subscribing, we encourage you to activate the notification bell. This ensures that you'll see our future content.